All right, people, welcome to this episode, this podcast of Vision to Mission. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Mayor Derrick Wood with us, the newly re-elected Mayor Derrick Wood of the town of Dumfries, Virginia. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing, Mayor?
I'm better than good, and I'm better than most, Brandon. Thank you for having me today, and thank you for being able to spread this message and to be able to do what you do for your taking your vision to mission and being able to expose it to the masses. So I appreciate it. Anytime I get the opportunity to be able to speak on a platform like this, I don't take it lightly, and I'm humbled, and I do appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. So let's just kind of dig right in. That's what we do.
Okay.
And for those of us, who are listening, and everyone in the audience, if you want to know more about Mayor Derrick Wood, all of his information will be in the show notes. That's how we do. So you're newly re-elected. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So the first question that I have, because I've never been in a political campaign, kind of share with me a little bit about your plans. How did you design your campaign? Because I would assume that it's different for re-election versus getting elected the first time. So how did you design that?
So campaigns, and that's a great question, because a lot of people doesn't know what it takes to run a campaign. I've ran now, I think, 4 or 5 campaigns, because I was elected first in 2012.
Okay.
Was re-elected in 2014 because it was a partial term. Ran for a county-wide seat in 2015 that I didn't win. Ran again in 2016. Right? So I went 18 is when I ran for mayor.
Okay.
Right? And then I just ran for re-election here in 22. And a re-election campaign is different, because the first thing you have to establish, and this is a principle I learned from Mr. Covey, Stephen Covey.
That's right.
And he said, you got to begin with the end in mind, right? And so the first thing when you're running a campaign is you got to identify what your win number is.
Okay.
Right? And how do you, I know you're like, well, how do you know what your win number is?
Right.
And so what your win number comes from, it comes from you looking at who voted in the last 2 to 3 election cycles that match up with yours.
Okay.
And then you have to look at how many new voters actually registered, right? And so it's a game of who's likely to vote. And you need 50 plus 1% of that as a win number, right? And so you then establish what your win number is. And then you have to work backwards. Then you have to meet that many registered voters and figure out what's your plan to meet those voters and to be able to count your votes, right? And so you don't go into, and it's a lot of, I know I simplified it, but it's a whole lot of moving parts to get to that. And so going into a re-election campaign, it's more like, all right, where are your blocks of votes? Like, who are already the ones that support you? And because everybody who has a vote actually carries a block of votes, so they are influencers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So they have a sphere of influence around them.
They have
Is it typically like family, friends, faith, community, that type of thing?
And so if you can count those blocks of votes, you pretty much know your pathway to it. And once you already, so re-election works because you already have a proven track record. So this sphere of influence, they want you to stay in this position, and they're going to commit to bring you X amount of votes. And so it's really who are your surrogates, or who are the people you have working for you. So re-election is all about your team, more or less, and having a strong team out in the community.
No,
because at this point, you go from a nobody to a somebody, and now you have a bunch of people working for you. Politics, a lot of people don't understand. People. And I was like this when I first ran. I said, look, I'm not a politician. I'm just a concerned citizen. But politics is really about you being able to influence a whole bunch of people to get stuff done.
That's right.
Right? And so we say we don't want politicians, but you need somebody who can be political for a political position to get something done. And so I had to learn that. I was naive and ignorant to what politics was, because I literally, when you're running for a seat, you're not a politician. You are a citizen, but you're seeking a seat as a politician.
Right. So let me ask you this.
And people have put a bad name on what a politician is, because they label politicians sometimes to corruption or stuff they don't like. And so on one side, politician gets a negative connotation, but they don't really highlight the good stuff that you do as a politician.
Well, see, that's part of the issue, isn't it? Like, wasn't the quote that says, power corrupts Absolute power corrupts, absolutely, right? And I think that, in my opinion, right, I've never been a part of a political campaign, but I've looked at lots of CNN and Fox and MSNBC and read lots of stuff. When you have someone in a position of power and influence and authority, right, doesn't it bring out part of their selfish nature, their human nature? And I think it really, for those who have, as you've said, gotten things done, who have kind of maintained kind of that purity of character, that's great. But then you have the other people who kind of behind closed doors, once they're faced with certain temptations, opportunities, lobbyists, that type of thing. Well, what are you going to do? So, how have you dealt with that on a local level?
So let's be honest. The concept of politics or a democratic society,
yep,
is a Greek philosophy.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Plato, Aristotle, they established politics, right? And when you really study the etymology, if you really study, I did a lesson one time for a group called Government, Is It Your Friend or Foe?
Okay.
Right? And the paradox is it's both, right? It depends on what side you're on.
That's right.
Because if you're on the side you don't like, it's your foe. But if you're in it, then it becomes your friend, right? The paradox of politics is it's gonna be influenced by your upbringing, your values, your culture, and what you believe. That's just the paradox of it. Like, you can only bring to it who you are and what you are, right? And so politics ultimately is, listen, power is no good if you don't know how to use it, right? And so politics is, you told the people you were gonna push an agenda, and are you just gonna do what you said you're gonna do? And no matter who you are in politics, there's a percentage of the people who ain't gonna like nothing you do because they just didn't vote for you, right? And so there's always 49% of the population that's gonna hate you, that's gonna talk about you, and sometimes they might just be the loudest voice. You might not get the 51% of the people who support you to be a loud voice. And so the nature of politics is, how do you get your message out there? How do you benefit the most amount of people? And how do you do good based on your value system, on the foundation of what you were built on?
Absolutely. And so would you agree that, politics, it comes down really to one word, relationships?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's what you can't get in politics and not be somebody who know how to work with people. Because if you're not working with people, you're not getting anything done.
Right.
And you got those people who burn bridges down, right? And then when they need to go cross a bridge, there's no bridge for them to go off.
That's right.
And it takes time to rebuild those bridges. It was the case in point for us in the town of Dumfries. We didn't have necessarily, when I became the mayor, the relationships on the local level. We didn't have relationships on the state level, and we didn't have relationships on the federal level that we needed to do this successful.
Right.
Very quickly, and if you go back and you check the record of my inaugural speech, my swearing-in ceremony, the first thing I said is, I'm going to build these bridges. And what I've accomplished in 4.5 years as mayor is I built relationships with the county. I built relationships on the state level, and I built relationships on the federal level, to the point where I'm in leadership roles on a national level. I'm in leadership roles in a state level, and I serve on these national boards, on these state boards, and I'm representing my community not only as mayor, but as a chief ambassador.
As a chief ambassador, I like that. And so, you just talked about what you've done over the past few years. So can you share just a few of the accomplishments you've had over the past few years, and what's your next, let's say, 3 to 5 year vision for the town of Dumfries specifically?
Yeah, so in the short time as mayor, rebuilt the staff and really stabilized the staff. Local government, there's really a revolving door.
Okay.
Right? And so before you can really create any type of success, right, the most important part, as a real estate agent in building a property is the foundation.
Yeah.
Right? And so we had to bring in a town manager who really understood the vision and where we're going. And the vision, my vision has been steadfast, right? My vision to my mission over
There you
the
go.
last
Right.
10 years has been steadfast. It's been unmovable. It's been, I'm going to make the town of Dumfries a destination place that people from all over the DMV not going to just drive through, but they're going to drive to.
That's right.
With a purpose. So that's, I created that in 2012, right? And everybody, and the beautiful thing about it, right? Because Dumfries didn't have a sense of identity.
Right.
And people, I remember people looking at me in 2012, 2013, 14, like, what does that even mean? And I didn't even know how we was going to get to it. But the fact that I was calling those things that be not as though they were,
That's
I
right.
knew that they was going to, and everything was going to line up to get there. And so you're looking at from 2018 to 2022, where we're at now, we brought in staff, we rebuilt the staff, we rebuilt the police department.
That's right.
Where there's a stable foundation. In that time, we outlasted a pandemic. Over the last 3 years, our revenue has increased 55%, which is the largest growth in this region. The only other area that's close to us is Loudoun County. They had an increase in revenue 35%, all while we kept our taxes flat, meaning we did not raise our tax rate, right? Meaning, how did we do that? We attracted in major businesses and partnerships and development that was going to allow our time to grow smartly. And so we brought in a game-changing project like the Rose, right? 2, we brought in not only the Rose, but we took the revenue that we brought in because it was so substantial, and we took care of those same staff people that we hired and put in place, giving them a full benefit package, which no other locality, I don't think in the Commonwealth of Virginia, pays their employees a full benefit package. Not only for them, but for their family members. They pay nothing for health, medical benefits out of their pocket, which is unheard of.
Right.
We also this year gave a historic real estate tax abatement to all our residents.
Okay.
So we turned around and we also took care of our residents. Gave them a 6-month tax abatement, but they didn't, because we started to see inflation in the economy. So we felt like, how can we take care of our citizens?
Right.
It's huge. We shut down one of the biggest eyesores that they talked about in this community, which was a construction landfill. Right?
Yeah.
It's set right there off of I-95, huge piece of real estate. And it was set to shut down once they reached a certain height or a certain time period, which I think was another 7 to 8 years.
Okay.
We were able to approve a major resort gaming emporium to be built, and it's going to be open next year.
Okay.
Right? This is stuff, I'm telling you, from 2018, from the time I took the helm as mayor to now, what we were able to accomplish, which is, you know, in that frame of time, nobody has seen that type of success in that short period of time. And we also was able to build the relationships to go out and secure the funding so that we can start the Route 1 realignment widening project in the town.
And I think that's really important because we deal with so much traffic generally here in just Northern Virginia, right? So let me go back. Let's go back to the gaming emporium. Let me ask you about that. There are people who have had some concerns.
Okay.
You know, they said, well, you know, is it a casino or is it a casino under the name Gaming Emporium? And will that, you know, introduce the potential for more crime and more unsavory characters in the area? So how would you address that? Because as a mayor, part of it is, yeah, you don't run the police department, you know, but part of the safety of the community, right? And the social welfare of the community is your responsibility, as well as bringing in tax dollars, right? As well as bringing in exposure, as well as, you know, really lifting up the name of the town of Dumfries, what you're doing. But how would you address that particular concern?
First of all, safety is on everybody's biggest concerns. Like when you get elected, one of the things you're gonna hear almost all politicians campaign on is public safety.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. And so when you look at, let's just talk about the Rose. The Rose has been in place for 2 years now.
Okay.
In the 2 years, we might have had 2 incidents, and they've been in the parking lot because somebody didn't want to give up the keys because they was drinking while they was in there. Right. There has been no major increase in crime because of that. So I want to put that out there. According to safewise.com, the town of Dumfries in the Commonwealth of Virginia has ranked the last couple years as the top 5 safest communities in the Commonwealth of Virginia, right? Meaning we don't have any that many property crimes. We don't report any major physical crimes or any of that type of stuff. So safewise.com, you will see that Dumfries is ranked top 5 safest communities. 2, gambling or whatever, casino, gaming emporium, whatever you want, tomato. Difference between a gaming emporium and a casino. A casino has poker, roulette, the dice. It has the table games.
Right.
A gaming emporium only has those slot-like machines that you see, and it has live horse racing that you watch on the monitor.
Okay.
And so a gaming emporium just has. So that's the difference in the two.
Okay.
Now, people say you're bringing gambling or you're bringing a vice to the community. Well, it's something that's already legal. It's at every gas station that you go to, every 7-Eleven has gambling at it. It's called the lottery.
Right.
And people, and you see, as soon as it shoots up to a couple $2 billion, everybody's running in these places and they're buying these lottery tickets. So it's already there. Now, what I said, what I was bringing to this community, I wasn't bringing gambling. I was bringing economic development to this community, right? I was bringing over 600 jobs. I was bringing 8 restaurants. I was bringing an additional $11 million worth of revenue to the county and an additional another $10 million to the town, right? So now I'm increasing the revenue so I can provide more resources and more services to this community. And when I walk into the current gaming emporium, I see people that live within a 2-3 mile radius who come up to me when I walk, because I walk in there often just to see, just to show my presence. And people come up to me all the time and have conversations with me. They say, I remember one of the first managers I met and had a conversation with, she said, man, I had just lost my job before this came in, you know, and I had 2 or 3 kids. And now, you know, I can almost walk to work because it's right here. I'm so appreciative that you fought to bring this here.
Right.
2, what separates this, I think, from most of the casinos is the type of community partner this project has been to the town of Dumfries and to the surrounding community. Within 2 years, they've almost given out $1 million in contributions, not tax revenue, just in charity. I think it's close to $600,000 right now that they've given out to different charities in this community, from the Boys and Girls Club to ACTS, to a lot of these food pantries and some of these projects. They have been a community partner, as well as their staff comes out. They volunteer at parades. They volunteer on community cleanup days. I don't think you can go up to an MGM and find out how much money they've given out to the community or how much their staff come back and they give to the community. And so what I found was a great community partner who brought into the vision of helping to make Dumfries a destination place. And you don't find these type of business partners. And as a mayor, as any type of politician, you're looking for great partnerships that can advance and to improve the whole value of your community. And I think we've been able to accomplish that with this Rose, with this casino, whatever people. I haven't seen an increase in crime. I haven't seen no increase in no human trafficking. And I haven't seen all of these vices that people brought. What I have seen is people get jobs. What I have seen is my ability to be able to take care of my staff. I've seen my ability to give back to the community with a tax abatement. All of this happens because the increase in tax revenue from a commercial business where we're not dependent on real estate taxes.
And you didn't increase the tax
And
rate.
I did not increase the taxes.
Absolutely. And so one of the biggest things I think, whether it's on a local level, state or federal level, right? It's all about these years, especially about economic development.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to bring in some type of a business, some type of an entity that's going to help raise revenue for the community so that you don't pass on those costs, right? To the community, that a lot of other places have done. I used to live, man, some of the highest taxes I've ever seen. I used to live in New Jersey. Yeah. And New Jersey has some of the highest property tax rates. New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, like all up there, right, in the nation. It's unbelievable. But down here, it's not, it's not as bad. And I think it makes it much more attractive, for people to come down, to the town of Dumfries. Now, geographically, it's a small area. So is there the possibility to increase housing in the area, or kind of how is that looking potentially? Or you're really just more focused because maybe there are certain constraints that are out of your control. So you're more focused on the business side.
No, that's a great question. And it goes to the second part of your last question. Okay. What do I see the future in the next 2 to 3 years looking like, right? So that plays into that question. There's a housing shortage in America, period. Yes, sir. Right? When the recession hit, in 2008, 2000, when we had the whole implosion of the mortgage industry, the whole housing implosion, builders stopped. You had houses that got vacated, a lot of houses that was lost. And so, so builders naturally slowed down. And so it's kind of like, and I'm a student of this, as you can see, right, of all this. I go a little bit too deep in teaching, excuse me if I.
No.
And so we had a housing crisis. And so there's a lot of the homelessness and all of that other stuff because our population growth has exceeded the number of houses that's being built. So it's a national housing type crisis going on. And so the next 2 to 3 years, Dumfries has already approved 2 senior housing, 2 55 and older communities.
Fantastic.
Right? One on Grand Park Road and one off of Curtis Drive. Right? And I think you're looking at close to 400 units for seniors, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on that. 2 is actually coming up this week. We're looking at another 200 to 300, what are we calling, apartment townhouses type units.
Okay, yeah.
You know, that we're looking to begin to discuss. And probably by the time this comes out, we've already discussed that publicly, that we're looking to develop right there on Main Street.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Nice facade, everything, because we have to build up the density. Dumfries has no more land, right? My other vision would be to purchase some of the land that's on Quantico Creek, right? It's been in our strategic plan since 2014 to dredge Quantico Creek. But I want to add to that, well, if we can get the property on Quantico Creek, not only be the leading voice in dredging that, but then to build more housing units. And then with that, we can attract the type of commercial development that we need.
Absolutely. Right?
Which we need sit-down restaurants in Dumfries, right? We, you know, the argument is we need a decent grocery store in Dumfries, like a Harris Teeter or something like that. Now, when you look at the economics of a grocery store in Dumfries to all the grocery stores, it don't make sense. And this is a good point for me to explain to people why. When you look in a 2 or 3 mile radius in Dumfries, let's count the grocery stores. Okay. All right, because Walmart would count as a grocery store. Lido's, Aldi's would count as grocery store. Food Lion, Shoppers Food Warehouse, even Target. Right. Then you have the little small mom and pop grocery stores like Toto's and U-Marts. Right. So in a 2 or 3 mile radius, you have 8 grocery stores. Right. And so when you look at the number of households and people and what their spend is, you cannot attract a Harris Teeter. You cannot attract a Whole Foods because the numbers don't make sense. Absolutely. Right.
They're not going to have the demand.
They don't have the demand.
Right.
So yes, am I trying to bring them a grocery store? Absolutely. But the stuff that people don't see is the numbers that make sense. And so, you know, coming on platforms like this and explaining, look, this is the work I've been doing to try to get it. When we show them the numbers, they're like, hey, Mayor, you need more people. You need more housing to be able to afford to make sense because people aren't spending. And then if you go another mile, so if you go 4 miles out, you even bring in the Wegmans and all the other grocery stores that come into this little circle parameter, and Wegmans is eating up the lion's share of They're getting the lion's share. There's data because of your cell phones, your NFC, all of that. They can see where everybody is traveling from to go to these grocery stores. It's amazing, the technology, and I don't want to go into that because I hired a retail strategy company that's been part of one of my major accomplishments in the last 4 years to come in to teach me about how to attract retail and how to do economic development because I'm truly a student. And a lot of people look at the mayor as a ceremonial role in the town or a part-time role because we hire a manager to run the day-to-day operation. So we're really, most people think we're elected just to show up 2 meetings out of the month, right? And so they don't see all the work that goes into, and I love the way you started off, politics is about relationships. And you can't be part-time building relationships to be successful. You have to be out here and be proactive about pushing an agenda and being a policy maker.
Right, and then I would assume your role as a mayor is very similar to that as a governor because you have to govern, which means you have to execute. No, you have to plan, you have to prepare, right? And then you also have to execute on a local level, which makes you even more hands-on. Have you found like you have a lot of red tape that you have to go through in terms of actually getting things done? If you have a particular, you know, if you say you want to help to usher in a particular business or businesses right? You have a small plot of land, they want to build a lot of the logistics that go behind it. You know, is it more difficult for you, or is it a little bit less difficult for you because, again, you don't have as much to deal with?
So here's the teaching moment. We have a form of government called a council manager form of government.
Council manager.
Council manager form of government.
Okay.
Most of your local governments, all of them in the state of Virginia except for one, which is Richmond. Richmond has what's called a strong mayor.
Okay.
Right? A strong mayor means it's like D.C., Mayor Bowser, it's like Baltimore, Mayor Lightfoot,
right.
Like the new mayor, Karen, that just got elected in L.A. They're what you call strong mayors. Baltimore, he's a strong mayor, right? But the vast majority, 90% of your local governments are what you call council manager form of government.
Okay.
Meaning everybody is part-time. They just create policy and vision. And you hire a political science major, somebody that's a manager, somebody that's well-versed in government. Because your elected people don't know how to do all of these, how to run a public works department and all of that. So you hire a town manager.
Okay, town manager.
Right, who, in all intents and figure, is the head of the government, right? So the council collectively has to set the vision. They have to set the policies. And it's the town manager's job to execute the vision of the collective council.
Got it.
So now it's not one person directing this guy. It's, in some instances, 7 people telling this one guy. So you have 7 different opinions who's elected. So this is where the challenge comes in. Because now, in the past, you've had 7 different personalities who are arguing and fight, and they don't have one vision, but they got division.
Right.
And they're trying to give it to this town manager.
Got it.
And so it's not collectively until you can have one vision, one mission that you give to this town manager, and it's an agreed set upon goals that he can go out, right, and he can execute.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes it to collect. If you can get a council who comes together collectively as a team to achieve a goal, which is whatever that goal is, and to set it out, and you bring in the right manager who can then govern and manage the team to execute, then you're successful. But the issue is most elected people don't understand. They don't come in to learn their roles, right? Right. And this was what mentorship, this is a lot of those things coming on. And I know later on, one of my callings is because I see a lot of elected officials that come in and they come in gung-ho, but they don't know how to govern and how to get into that policy making.
Right.
And it's understanding your form of government. It's understanding, because power is no good if you don't know how to use it.
That's right.
Like you're in a position of power, but learn how your power works before you go out here trying to do things and execute things.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So before we transition on, one more final question for you. Over the past couple of years and even recently, what are some of your own personal lessons that you've learned as an individual, you know, as a man, as a family man, right? You know, through your position and through meeting a variety of people in different walks of life?
You know, the biggest lesson, and I think that, you know, we all know this, but sometimes you got to learn is you can't please everybody, right? And so, in essence, when you get in here, you have to be delivered from other people's opinions.
Right. We'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And when I say that is because everybody has an opinion. Everybody's going to have something to complain about, right? Ultimately, like we talked about the roles and how controversial that was.
Right.
And what I told folks is, I'm not making the decision based on your opinion. I'm basing it based on the vision and the mission that I promised you when you elected me.
There you go.
And I say, does it line up to making Dumfries a destination place? Yep, it checks the box. When you elected me, I said I was going to make Dumfries a destination place. So here's what it lines up. And so the biggest lesson is to focus on a vision or a mission, right? And once you get that lined up, and then 2, how to be inclusive of your vision and how to get everybody to buy in.
I like that. I like that. So 2 of the people, you follow a lot of people, you know, you're influenced by a lot, you know, but I chose 2, you know, who I liked as well. You know, Dr. Eric Thomas and Dr. Miles Monroe. You know, and I was just kind of perusing some of the books by Dr. Miles Monroe, Kingdom Principles. You know, and I talked about that before. Understanding Your Potential. And there's a video that he did. I remember looking at this on my own. 10 Keys to Maximizing Your Time. So let me read this quote to you.
Okay.
And ask you a question based on this quote from Dr. Miles Monroe. Okay. And again, we'll provide the link for this. Solid character will reflect itself in consistent behavior, while poor character will seek to hide behind deceptive words and actions. So how do you feel that this is playing out today in the area of politics? Do you think people are being deceived, or do they just choose to hide their disbelief and suspend it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, read the quote one more time, because you said it so fast that I don't want people to have to rewind it. I want
Absolutely.
You to say it. Yeah.
So again, this is from Dr. Miles Monroe. Solid character will reflect itself in consistent behavior, while poor character will seek to hide behind deceptive words and actions. Mm-hmm. So again, how do you feel that this is playing out today on a larger scale in politics?
Yeah, character is essentially, it's who you are, right? Your talent that gets you to a position, it's your character that keeps you there.
Can you repeat that for the people?
Your talent will get you in the room, but it's your character that keeps you there.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so your character, in essence, Dr. Monroe used to describe it as a statue. Right? And so if you go outside, no matter what the weather is, that statue, the birds can poop on it, whatever can happen, but this statue remains the same.
Right.
And so when you get into a place, your statue or your character will reveal yourself. Right? Your talent can't hide your character.
I like that.
Right?
Absolutely.
Your talent can't hide it. So you can't hide behind who you really are. Because who you are will reveal yourself over time, right? Because you can't put on this show or this facade. I mean, we saw that in the nature of the last election, right? We you know, when people will say, I didn't lose the election when you clearly lost, right? And you know, just because you say it don't make it true.
Right.
You know, the deceptive practice. And that just, that's now you're seeing the character, and the people who supported you now, they can't no longer support you because they're like, and maybe they wasn't close, or maybe they was deceived, because we're in the era of social media. We're in the era of whatever. And social media is like, they're putting their vision out. They're putting out the perception of what they want you to see.
Right.
Same with the television. Television is telling a vision, right?
Right.
And so you don't see what's there, you see what you're programmed to see. And until you change the way you see a thing, the thing you're looking at, it never changed.
No, I like that a lot. And so looking at the second part of this question, you know, in relation to what you said, because, you know, it says, you know, do you think that people are deceived, or do they simply choose to suspend their disbelief? And I'm thinking about what you had said. And, you know, and it's bothersome that, and you can explain this to me from from a political point of view, definitely, but also from a human nature point of view. How is it that so many people can choose to say, you know what, I know that this is a terrible candidate. I know that this is a liar. I know that this is a person who is being intentionally deceptive. I know that this person is, from what I can see, incompetent, right? I can see that this person is clearly not going to be the best when you have two different options. In spite of that, I'm going to give my vote to this person because I'm more loyal to a political party. Help me to understand from a political, maybe human nature perspective, how people can suspend that disbelief and choose a party over all of these other clearly displayed poor characteristics, which tell you this person is not good for us nor good for our locality or our country. So how can people do that, and why are they doing that now? In your opinion?
My opinion, groupthink.
Okay.
Cattle mentality. All right. And when I say cattle mentality is, everybody knows what a cattle is, right? So a cattle is born inside this little square fence, right? And cattle just graze this one inside this fence. They're born, they die, and they just walk in a circle, right? And all of a sudden, one cattle leans on the fence, and the fence breaks, and he ventures out to the rest of this pasture, and he's telling the other cattle, come on over here. And they're like, no, don't you know that this is the right grass? This is the right area.
Right.
Like, we've never been in this area.
Right.
Right? It's two things people don't like.
Okay.
People don't like change.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing they don't like is they don't like things to remain the same.
All right.
It's a paradox.
Right. Okay.
People don't like change and they
Right.
don't like things to remain the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got this one cattle who don't think like the group, and now they're mad, right? And you're born into the group, you think like the group, and all you know is the group. So
Right.
if anybody speaks against the group, all you know, it's a cattle mentality. It's a group thing.
Mm-hmm.
Harriet Tubman said this. She said, I freed over 1,000 slaves. She said, but I could have freed over 1,000 more, except they didn't know they were slaves.
Mm.
They say, we's good here. Why we need to go out there? It's the cattle mentality.
Right.
They grew up in the slave house. They've been around the slave master. This is all they knew.
That's right.
Why do we need to be free? To the point where she had to take a pistol sometimes and say, slave, she didn't use that word,
Right.
but you coming with me.
Right.
You know, type of situation.
Yes.
Right? And she had to take them out by force. Right? And so in politics, or what people seeing, they're programmed by the television, or they're contained. So Fox News is going to give you their one perspective.
Right.
And the people who watch that all day, they're going to be programmed to think like this group.
Right.
CNN, MSNBC, they're going to program their people just to think in a certain way. And whoever you're around, right, you're going to think like the group unless you focus and you intentionally become an independent thinker.
Right. Well,
Right.
Which is like what Lincoln did, right, with having a team of rivals around him, so that he would
And
have
Obama built the team of rivals.
Absolutely,
A lot of
he
people
did,
don't
based on
realize that.
Right.
Yeah, Obama built the whole team of rivals. Like the people who attacked him and beat him up the most, he hired all of those folks.
Right.
On that. Yeah, a lot of people don't know. I don't want to get into that. It's a great book he just wrote. But but you want to be able to, you know, surround yourself with different thoughts and opinions.
Right.
Right. And you got to have an open mind. Right. The reason why a lot of people, to answer your question, just go with the flow, is because people, quite frankly, they're lazy. Right. They don't want to do their own homework and their own research. So they're just they're buying somebody else's opinion.
I agree with
They're
that.
taking somebody else's advice.
Right.
Right. And so they'll go with the lesser, the weaker candidate, the person who's not the most qualified, because they are bought into what this group of people is saying.
Right.
You know, the vast majority of the people voted for me is because of the bad things they think about casinos, or the bad thing they think about gaming. You know, the fear, the calls I got about, oh my gosh, you're going to bring all this prostitution. Go look at Atlantic City and this and that.
Right.
You know, I've heard every possible thing I could have heard
Absolutely.
about bringing this project there. Now we're 2 years in, you know, from the traffic, all of that. I'm not getting any calls to say I was wrong.
Right. And the thing is, that's character, because you deal with it head on. You deal with it honestly. And what I appreciate about you, you also deal it with data, right? Data is really important for people who choose to actually sit down and read it and try to understand it, right? It tells you what's really going on versus, oh no, nothing's going on. Everything's fine. Everything's great. Nothing to see here. Where you could say, well, no, look at the statistics, right? And then you have something that's grounded. And for people who choose to do their research, which you would want people to do that.
Absolutely.
You know, overall, to be perfectly honest with you, you know.
And quite frankly, they elected us to make decisions.
Absolutely. They trust you to do that.
They trust us to make, like, we are elected to lead, to make decisions. You don't want a leader who don't got a backbone to make decisions.
Right.
Right? And so we're going to make the tough decisions, good, bad, or indifferent, and we're going to stand on the decisions that we made.
And I tell you, Derrick, I can't, I just do not respect people who say one thing, then they get on camera, or they do, and then they say something different. And I understand you have a constituency. I understand in the next room over, you know, you have some people who are, you know, how can I say this, who have a little bit more authority, right? Some people that you have to answer to. I understand all that, but at the end of the day, you have to answer to God, you have to answer to yourself.
Absolutely.
You know, you have to have, you know, what kind of self-esteem do you really have if you're, you know, purporting one thing here, but it's something else over here. And it's really bothersome. Now, am I going to say that I'm perfect? Absolutely not. But I think the biggest word that we've seen for decades in politics is hypocrisy, right? You know, oh, well, this is what I said I was going to do during the campaign. This is what I promised to do during my campaign. But this is the reality of what has actually happened over the last few years. And then people say, well, you're a hypocrite, you know. So why did you say this, but now you're doing this? And I think it's part of what you had mentioned before is because once people kind of get in the room, the talent, right, the stump speeches, putting together a fantastic campaign, saying stuff on the surface, got them in the room, you know. But now that they're in the room,
their character can't keep them.
No, right. The Bible says bad company corrupts good character, right? You might have come in with good character, but now it's, you know, you put some drops of ink in that water and it looks completely different, you know, which leads me to another quote that I want to read by Dr. Miles Monroe. Now, I'm going to assume here that you're not going to be like Marion Barry, mayor for life, right? I'm going to assume you're going to move on at some point, right? You're going to graduate, right? Here's from Principles and the Power of Vision.
Okay.
Dr. Miles Monroe. Okay, so now we're moving forward a little bit.
Yeah.
People who change the world have declared independence from other people's expectations. So let me repeat that again. From Principles of Power and Vision. People who have changed the world have declared independence from other people's expectations. So question number one, what's your vision for yourself? You know, post, you know, next election cycle, do you plan on running again? Hypothetically, is it open? You're in prayer. What's your vision for yourself next 3 to 5 years, 7 years even?
So the development of the town of Dumfries, I'm fully invested as the chief ambassador, as the chief visionary for the town of Dumfries. One, I'm looking to bring major conventions and conferences here. That's already in play. Next 2 years, I'm bringing the first conference here, the Virginia Municipal League Conference.
All right. Shameless plug, March 4th, 2023, the Vision2Mission Real Estate and Leadership Conference will be held right there in the town of Dumfries at the Potomac Valley Church. So shameless plug, had to put it in there. That's one thing that's going to be bringing light and exposure to the town of Dumfries with hundreds of real estate professionals from around the area.
There it is. So I'm looking to bring those type of conferences to the town of Dumfries. Dumfries is the oldest historically town in the state of Virginia. It was built on a deep water port. The port got silted in because of poor farming practices. The port used to rival New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston with the amount of tobacco and goods that used to live there. My vision is to revitalize and to bring back that port. The infrastructure bill that got passed in this Biden administration, historic piece of legislation. We haven't had any major investment in infrastructure in this country in 70, 80 years. You go around the world, they're investing in their airports, they're investing in their infrastructure. We haven't, this is a major piece of legislation. I don't care what party people are in. There's money set aside to reconnect historic communities to a body of water. I ideally want to go after that money to revitalize and bring back the Port of Dumfries.
Fantastic.
Right?
Fantastic.
And I don't know if I could get it done in 4 years or if it's going to take me 8 years to do it. Right? But that's ultimately my goal, is to revitalize that port. Right? And from there, I see myself becoming mentor, consultant to other people who need to be successful in influencing and changing their communities, right? Because I believe we're all the solution to a problem in the world. Because I think ultimately I got to become a mentor to other people who get into this and help to develop them and help them to grow and become effective. I think that the favor that God has put on me in getting into these positions and being in the rooms, I see differently, I understand differently. And so if I can mentor and teach other people, I think that's ultimately, if I can accomplish, when I accomplish,
that's right,
revitalizing the port and Dumfries becoming that major destination, I'll be able to move on and then to move into my next phase and to begin to train the next generation of change things.
I love that.
Because I believe our legacy isn't going to be with our names on streets, our names on buildings, but our legacy is going to be in the people that we build up.
That's right. Absolutely. You kind of stole that from me. So, which leads me to my next question. as you're becoming that mentor, right? As you're becoming, that trusted individual, that, evolving in your leadership, right? Growing and deepening in your leadership. What are some things that you want to grow in yourself, right? What are some things that you're working on daily that's going to help you along your journey to get there?
So one of my philosophies is never stop learning.
Okay.
Right? As a leader, you can only lead based on me having information that other people don't have. Right? And I think a lot of people don't know I'm just a leader because I know a little bit more than you. And so I always fight and for me, most politicians just in a politician circle. So I'm in this politics circle, I'm in this business world, I'm in this church world, and I bring all of these different spheres together, right? And it gives me a different lens in which to see anything, and it's fresh. Because, again, if you're just in the group, you're only gonna think like the group. And so I'm in multiple groups so I can bring in that type of thing. So for me, on the level of growth, I gotta have mentors as well. So I continue to be mentored, even through his death, Dr. Miles Monroe, through guys like Dr. Eric Thomas. I go on a retreat with him once a year, right? And to be able to go that. So I understand that, I don't have all of the answers to be in a position where I'm being mentored, in every sphere, from physical aspect. I tell people, if we're gonna have longevity, right, then we got to be in a place where we're taking care of our physical body. And I talk all the time about healthy eating, active living.
All right.
Right?
Healthy eating, active living.
Yeah, that's HEAL.
Absolutely.
Healthy eating, active living. And so, once or twice a year, I gotta fast. I gotta detox, right? Because most sickness is in the food in this country and most countries, right?
Yeah.
And so you got to give your immune system, your bowels, a chance to regenerate and to heal themselves. And so it's me staying consistent with doing what I got to do and beginning with the end in mind, knowing that at some point we're going to have an expiration date, right? And learning to count my days. And being Dr. Eric Thomas said to us at one of the retreats, he said, what age do you want to live to, right? Because now you'll start to respect time, right? So if you want to live to 100, now you reverse engineer that. How many months do you have? How many days? Now you learn that all your days are important to you. Knowing that you got an expiration date and being conscious of that, because no matter what religion, no matter where you grew up, you know that at some point you're going to die.
No, absolutely, which leads me to this. So one more final thing before we end off. So, Jesus shared the parable of the talents, right? And within the parable of the talents, please read in the Bible, in the New Testament, about the parable of the talents. And, the master said, you wicked, lazy servant, to the one who had hid the talent in the ground. And when the master came back and said, hey, let me give this back to you, this is yours. Because they didn't multiply what was given. So it was literally called wicked and lazy. Another Miles Monroe quote and final one. This is from Living with a Purpose, Devotions for Discovering Your God-Given Potential. He says, the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but a life that never realized its full potential. So let me reread that and add on what you said. Greatest tragedy in life is not death, but a life that never realized its full potential, that never reverse engineered the amount of time that they had left to get things accomplished, just like you had mentioned. So what would you want to say to those, whether it's younger individuals, older individuals, those who want to pursue their dreams, but somehow feel stifled, they feel stuck, right? They're really unable to take those first steps. Given what you shared before, kind of given this quote, what would you share with them?
That's good. That's good. We're going to go back to the parable of the talents and work right on into that.
I love it.
That was perfect. One of my favorite parables because, first of all, everybody was born with some type of talent, with some type of gift on the inside of it.
Right.
All right. In the parable, I love it because he said he gave one talent, he gave another 2 talent, and he gave another 5 talent.
That's right.
But I love what he said next. He said, I gave each according to what they could manage.
There you go.
Here's the lesson. God ain't going to give you what you pray for. He's going to give you what you got the ability to manage. I had to just talk right to the people, right?
That's right.
He didn't say I gave each according to what they prayed for. He said I gave them each according to what they could manage, right? So he knew that the guy with one wasn't that good of a manager. He knew the guy with two could probably only manage two of his talents. And the one with five, he was a superstar. I know y'all wondering why some people thrive while others don't thrive, right? It's because people have identified their talents, right? So when God give you your talent, the question is, what are you going to do with your talent, right? So the greatest tragedy in life is not death, because everybody dies. So dying is not a tragedy. But now you have all of this talent. You have all of this potential, right? Potential is what you can do, but you haven't yet done.
Right.
It's who you're supposed to be, but you have yet to become. It's potential. Potential has nothing to do with what you've already accomplished. Right. He gave you this talent, and the master is saying, I'm going away, but I'm coming back because I need you to give me an account.
That's right.
Of what you're going to do with what I gave you. Now, I'm not giving you what you prayed for. I've been watching you. I know what you can manage, right? This is where the principle comes from. God don't give you what you pray for. He give you what you can manage, right? Or he ain't going to give you more than what you can bear. The one with one, he took and he buried his talent, right? And so a lot of people are sitting on talent right now. God calls you wicked and lazy. He's like Donald Trump on The Apprentice, and he's going to fire you. Right? That's exactly what he did to the guy. He fired him because he's lazy. And what's happening in culture right now, nobody wants to work. They think work is a bad thing. Go back to Genesis chapter 2. The whole reason you were created, right? It says God held back the rain because he couldn't find a man to work the ground. So he created man to work the ground. Men work a lot because God gave us work before he gave us women. I'm just kidding with that side. I always remind my wife of that.
That's right.
That's deep. God gave us work before he gave us women.
Yeah, and there's another quote from Miles Monroe. I think it's something like, it's important that we understand that women are closest to our heart because he made women out of our rib, which protects our heart. So go ahead.
No, so it's good. So we were created to work. Right? And so when you got your talent, the only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary. Right?
You got to repeat that.
Yeah, the only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary.
You should tell your boy SBF that.
Yeah.
From FTX and the crypto people.
Yeah,
they think that they could put success before work, but then you find out in the end.
No,
it's completely not true.
Work is not a bad thing.
Right.
Work helps you to reveal it uncovers your potential.
That's right.
Right. And so you're lazy when you don't want to work. There's so many scriptures about a man who don't work, eat.
That's right.
A man who a man is poor because he ain't working or he's hungry or he's lazy. Right. Everything goes back. Like the principle of this talent, if I can sum it up, whatever you mismanage, you lose, and whatever you manage well, you get more of.
There you go.
Whatever you mismanage, you lose, and stewardship is just management. Let me just say that. The principle it's a management principle, the parable of the talents. And what you got to get good at, like if you're watching this and you're a young person, study management. Right? That's all stewardship is. Take business management, whatever. Because everything in life, you're going to have to learn how to manage it.
Agreed.
And whatever you mismanage, you lose. Anybody who ever lost a house, anybody who ever lost anything, it's because they didn't learn how to manage it well. That's what the parable of the talents is all about. Yeah. It's a parable about management. I love it. When you brought it up, I was like, ooh, this is good. It's about management because the one who had two, he managed it so well that he doubled it. The master said, well done. Yep. You good and faithful manager.
That's right. There you go.
The one with five, he said, man. And so y'all wonder why the people with bad character probably got more stuff than you. The Bible says the wealth of the wicked is stored up for. Why does the wicked even have what you're supposed to have? Because they better managers. You are righteous and you ain't got nothing because you think because you praying and you righteous, you supposed to have it.
And you're right, because so many people say, well, I want to be blessed and highly favored, right? If I'm in the Baptist church.
You got to work.
But you're not highly managing what God has given you. So how do you expect, to get that in return?
Whatever you mismanage, you lose. Mm-hmm. The wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. The righteous got what, until you learn, the God says, I need to come back and get an account of your talent.
That's right.
People say, well, you're in politics, do you still barbecue? I say, I'm not in the business of burying talent. The guy with the one talent, when you go look at it, he took it, he buried it. He sat on his talent. Mm-hmm. He was lazy. He didn't want to do no work. Mm. See, everybody see my glory, but they don't know my story. Mm. They see my shine, but they didn't see my grind. Right? And so it's going to take a certain level of grind in order for people to shine. And so I'm telling you right now, don't let nobody tell you that you're going to have success without work. It's going to take a certain level of work. God's going to hold back the rain until you put your hands and you begin to work. Right? And if you work with your mind, right? I'm not saying it's a physical labor, but it takes a certain level of work to uncover and to release your potential and your talent. And that responsibility is up to you.
Look at that. Gems, gold. So let's go back to the very beginning. Anton, look this up for me real quick. But the founder of IBM, I believe his name is Tom Watson. And when he had formed IBM, he formed IBM with the end in mind. What would the company look like at the end of the day? So when it was formed and created, he said, this is what we're going to do. This is how our people are going to dress when they come to work. Mm-hmm. This is the culture that we're going to create. This is the management culture that we're going to have. And as a result, it's going to produce what I see in the end. But none of that happens without the work. Mm-hmm. There's a Denzel Washington, gives a speech and he simply says, hard work works. And even when I created my company several years ago, I was out praying and I said, God, I'm not going to bury my talent. Like I have to have a deep conviction about that because it's my responsibility. And I think that, as a man and as a father, when we have that deep responsibility, we sacrifice ourselves, right? For the greater good. We sacrifice ourselves because we know this is what we're supposed to do. And as a result, part of the return on that investment is not only going to be the joy, right? But it's going to be the productivity and the result. And so, let's end this off with, again, kind of going back to the beginning, right? Your campaign promises that you made as a mayor and some of the productivity and the result. You're in the middle of the journey right now, which is great while we're having this conversation, because at some point we'll be able to look back and we'll be able to reminisce on this conversation, right? So again, thank you for sharing with regards to people on the outside and giving them some motivation and giving them some inspiration. So if you're looking in the mirror and you're talking to yourself about where Derrick Wood's going to be in the town of Dumfries and your vision and where you see it going, what would you say to yourself?
I said, man, D, you said you was going to dredge Quantico Creek, and man, you pulled this thing off. Then you got this beautiful boardwalk and this nice hotel. Look at these restaurants. I mean, you got visitors. You got over 100,000 visitors coming here every single month. And the town of Dumfries is still only 1.6 square miles. Amazing to see that you did over a couple $2 billion worth of new development in this community in a short tenure. Wow, you kept your hand, and not only did you talk about it, but you did the work. You understood that activity breeds results, and that focused activity transformed this community.
I love it. That's your vision, and right now you're going to make that mission not impossible, but mission possible. Love it. So people, thank you so much for watching this episode, this podcast of Vision2Mission with Mayor Derrick Wood. Watch it again. Send it to as many people as possible. Thank you so much for your time, Mayor.
The pleasure is mine.
All right.
Hey, take action. Go after your dreams. Do it now.